Let's take a look at the Detroit Pistons recently signed free agent forward, Kevin Knox. A couple things I want to mention as we get going. I will refer to him as 6'9" in this breakdown because that's what he measured at the NBA Draft Combine. And any stats I use will include all 212 games of his 4-year career. The biggest thing that Kevin Knox has to be able to do is knock down three-point shots. This is the thing that he does best, and I think it's the attribute and the skill that he can most bring the Detroit Pistons. He shot 34% from three so far in his career on 3.3 attempts, and a little bit better, 36% on catch and shoot threes. It obviously still has to get better, but this is the thing he does best. Another thing that he could add that would really help is if he could do it off movement a little bit more. So he gets a hard closeout here. I don't even mind that he doesn't attack this space because he's not very efficient whenever he gets to his floater or in the lane. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But he wasn't very good in the film I watched. I watched games from all 4 years of his career. And off the dribble, the movement stuff just wasn't very good. Here, after a timeout, they draw up a play for him to get the flare screen. Executed well. He gets a wide open look at it, just not able to knock it down. And so I think there is a huge emphasis because this is what he does best. This is the skill that he can most bring to a team, that he has to make these shots. There's a lot of pressure for him to increase his catch and shoot percentage, but also be able to bring a little bit more. As you see a baseline screen there, gets a good look again, but not able to knock it down. If he can start doing stuff like this, so coming off a handoff, the defender tries to go underneath. This was just this past season against the Bucks. He stops behind it, gets his feet set, knocks it down. If he can do that, along with increasing his catch and shoot percentage, then he starts to become a valuable asset on the floor in terms of making shot and floor spacing. And then the mid-range pull-up. I'd buy the shot. The stroke looks good, as you can see, but the mid-range pull-up, again, wasn't very efficient. And the reason I alluded to earlier, he has to be so good with his shooting, is he doesn't bring a lot else to the table in terms of scoring. So here he catches, able to rip through and go, but just gets ripped as he gets into the lane. We're going to see him operate in a ball screen here. So this is his second most used play type. Only 0.82 points per possession as a pick and roll handler. The point per possession stuff is not very good if you get away from catch and shoot and transition, which we'll get to just a little bit later. And he just doesn't really have any nuance or finesse or really good skill. Even here, he attacks. I like that attack. He gets into the lane, but then he just has no real skill or moves to finish around the lane. You just kind of saw all the same stuff anytime he would attack. He's only made 38% of his shots around the rim on 512 attempts in his 4-year career. And I mentioned that ball screens was his second most used play type, but here you see him like take one dribble, pick it up, doesn't try to split the defense, doesn't try to attack Boogie. And so even though he has played in those situations a lot, just not a guy that's going to put a ton of pressure on the rim. And then one final one here, attacking Kyle Korver. I like it. He goes to his left, and he does get fouled. He gets to the free throw line, but he has half as many drives to his left as his right. He only has 44 finishes or attempts with his left compared to 420 with his right hand. And then he only gets to the free throw line 1.7 times a game. Now, I will mention he's played less than 20 minutes per game through his 4-year career. So obviously that skews the data just a little bit. Now there was some positive stuff. So this is early in his career here against Ben Simmons, a really good defender, able to show just a little bit of wiggle on that move and finish on that one. And then a lot of what his drives turn into is just this. Like he's just going to put his shoulder down and go. And I do want to mention, you'll see at the very beginning of this, I know, traveling is kind of a joke in the NBA. He traveled almost one time a game of the games I watched on the catch. So he does just have a little bit of fundamentals to work on there. But a lot of his drives are just kind of this bully drive to the rim, lower his shoulder, and attack. Did get a couple charges as well. I mentioned transition earlier. It's his third most used play type. It's his best play type. 1.29 points per possession. Usually is transition. Usually is better than the others. But he did look good and more comfortable in transition when he got the opportunity. He was below 1 point per possession as a pick and roll handler, catch and drives, handoff screens, isolations, all of those other play types. And what I didn't see enough of was that type of stuff. No cutting, didn't really help on the offensive boards, only a half an offensive rebound a game. So those are things that could really help his all-around value offensively beyond being able to make shots if he would find a way to be better at those things. And then the floater, it's something I want to buy into. but he's only made it at about 33% on his career. So there he goes to a little push floater. Looks nice. I believe that was in his rookie season. Here a year or two later, we're going to see him use the ball screen. Shows a little bit here, like I think he wanted to put his defender in jail, doesn't really execute it, gets to a spot, a good looking opportunity, but again, it's all about efficiency with Kevin Knox, and he just doesn't have it right now. Looking at his passing, I do want to say it got better. He's not going to create, guys. I talked about it earlier. Not a guy that's going to put a ton of pressure on the lane anyway. But I think as his career went on, he became really good just as a ball mover. He catches and he shoots. He catches and he's going to drive it right away. Or he makes the one more pass. And I do think that's a valuable skill. But as we're going to see on this clip, just not a guy that's going to make real high-level reads and passes. Airmails that one. He made the right decision actually on that one, but airmails it. But it did get a little bit better here. He drives the lane, forces a double team, kicks to Julius Randle on the weak side, one more pass, gets his teammate an open look. So I did just want to touch on the passing. Not going to be a high-level read guy, not going to be a guy averaging a ton of assists, but I did think he became a good ball mover as his career progressed. Let's look at the defensive end. This is the first game I watched, so back at his rookie season, he has struggled to get through screens, ball screens, hands off, those type of things. So here against the Jazz, you see him get hung up on that one, ends up in a bucket for Rudy Gobert. A couple possessions later in transition, same thing. He just isn't very good, not great footwork trying to get a step over the top of the ball screen, and it continued to happen throughout his career. So a little handoff there, again, gets hung up on it. He does continue to play and recover on that one, but he's not a guy that's going to be good defending on ball and ball screen situations, which again is a reason why I like him playing as a small ball four. I think that really hits on his skill level offensively and defensively. On the ball, kind of in isolation, I thought he was better than what I would have guessed going into the breakdown. So here against Georges Niang, I realize it's Niang, but these are the type of guys I think he would guard against second units. And you see here, he does a good job staying in front, moves his feet, and then uses that length to actually get a block. Not something he does a lot. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but he does have good length. Last season here against Drew Holiday, does a good job moving his feet, staying in front, does have a little bit of a bad habit of going for shot fakes, and then doesn't continue to play as Holiday gives it up. And then Knox ends up giving up a layup. And then here off ball, again, screen navigation kind of puts him at a disadvantage, but he gets back guarding Chris Middleton, does a pretty good job here staying in front of Middleton and contesting this shot. Now, Middleton's going to knock it down, but that's not the type of player he's going to have to guard, in my opinion. Steve Red Van Fleet here is able to go by, forces a difficult shot, but fouls him, and Van Fleet gets to the free throw line. So I do think he can hold up against second unit players on the perimeter, fours and even threes. But I do have questions about what is he going to do in the post. Now, I know everybody will joke about Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons had 20 and 20 in this game. So this was a very good game from Ben Simmons, and you see Knox isn't really able to hold up there in the post. So I don't know what a big who's very comfortable playing with his back to the basket, if Knox would be able to hold up in those situations. And then off the ball, there's some good and some bad. So let's start with the bad. First, he can get a little bit ball watching and lose his man. So here on the weak side, loses his man. Donovan Mitchell cuts in. Doesn't end up giving up anything, but you can just kind of see how he loses his guy. And then on the weak side again, this is Kyle Korver, and I realize there's a rotation here, which is actually what Knox does best, but you can't completely lose your man on the weak side, especially a shooter like Korver. And so what Knox did consistently give up through all 4 years of film was backdoors and gave up three-point shot attempts because he lost his man or got ball watchy. Even here, just a face cut by Jimmy Butler down into the lane, gets to the free throw line, a foul on Knox on that one. So we will have to get much better not losing his man off the ball. As you see one more clip here, gets hung up on the screen. Gordon Hayward ends up getting a wide open three. And those are the type of things that Knox has given up. And then the communication. I don't think this one is 100% his fault, but there were multiple times where him and his teammate just did not communicate effectively, and it ended up giving up an easy bucket for the offensive player. Now, where I do think he was decent was making rotations. So here you see a drive into the lane, and he's going to rotate to the weak side and be able to contest this weak side corner three. So I do think he does a good job in those situations. Here again, two guys get caught on the shooter, so he's going to rotate over here to get a box out on Rudy Gobert. Even though the shot goes in, I liked seeing him notice that rotation. Giannis rolls here. He's the low man. He's going to tag him. Now again, back to the communication. Him and Julius Randle both hug up for a little bit too long before he gets back. But as the play continues, you're going to see him make another rotation, drive into the lane. He's going to squeeze down here on George Hill on the backside and does a good job. If that shot would have came off, he may have been there for the defensive rebound. I do want to make note, he averaged less than half a steal a game, less than half a block a game. So it's not like he's going to be a disruptor on that end of the floor. So looking at Kevin Knox overall, I think he's best suited, in my opinion, playing as a second unit small ball four with some minutes at the three. The 3-point shooting, I think, has to get closer to 40% to offset some of his other limitations offensively. And then he's got to find a way to be at least a net neutral on the defensive end, eliminating some of the mistakes and being solid in rotations and on the ball.